What's going on, everybody? Rise and shine. This is the Trophy Hunters podcast, October the 5th, otherwise known as Kaulig Fan Day, the first annual Kaulig Fan Day. And we are recording just after noon Eastern time. Joining me on this episode, dude, it's a long time coming. How's it going, Ryan?
Oh my goodness, what a day, what a day. This is an exciting time to be a fan of Kaulig Racing. A huge announcement coming from Kaulig at their fan day as we kind of anticipated. I am super stoked, super excited, and I am ready to roll.
Absolutely. There was a lot that has come out and been speculated upon over the last little while. We sort of, I believe, anyways. I don't want to toot our own horn too much here, but I believe we were the first ones that sort of put out the whole, okay, when you look at this flyer, this is what it could mean, and it really makes sense to me, and it made sense to you too. And I'm trying to pull up the flyer here because I didn't have it ready. This was the first flyer they put out. Obviously, they put out a more updated one closer to the fan day. But when this flyer came out, man, this is mid Kyle Busch negotiations too, might I add. Even though they were negotiating with Kyle Busch at that time, I said to myself, that's AJ Allmendinger. And then when Justin Haley had his Daytona comments, not the one that sort of led some people, including myself, to believe that maybe Kyle Busch was already a done deal, but rather the fighting for his ride, it's not hard to do the math. If they already agreed to a deal with AJ for next year and they had a chance to put Kyle Busch in a car and weren't going to get another charter, then Haley probably would have been back to the Xfinity series, is my guess. Also, can we now officially stop with the Kaulig has to lease their charter to RCR nonsense? I know there's been people putting that out online for a while. It made no sense to me at all, and I'm glad that that didn't come to be. Dude, AJ Allmendinger, let's start with there. There's a lot more to get to, but AJ Allmendinger is back full-time in the Cup Series in 2023, and very likely beyond, as we've got a sort of a glimpse at what his deal looks like with Kaulig Racing, and maybe dive into that a bit, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the day we've been waiting for. Since we started doing these episodes, this was our prediction from the start. The flyer was a huge indicator to us. Using the Action Industry colors, they've been the primary sponsor for AJ Allmendinger this season. This was probably a very good, message that, hey, AJ's signed on and he's ready to go. And I said it last week, the poker face on AJ wasn't very good in my eyes, because there's no way that there hasn't been levels of discussion about AJ Allmendinger driving full-time in the Cup car, especially considering the results that they've had this season. And the group, the three of those gentlemen, Chris Rice, Matt Kaulig, AJ Allmendinger, I mean, they are a very tight group. They are playing golf. They are hanging out. They are constantly in communication. So, I definitely need to, pat you on the back a little bit and say we kind of called this about a month ago, probably even more so at this point. So, while today's the official announcement and Jordan Benacki came out on Monday and kind of teased it as a bit of a spoiler, but this is something we've had on the radar now for a little while, and we're at a point now where it is official and AJ is going to run, and I think this is the right decision for the team, and I never had any doubts that they were going to run this car for AJ. And then the second car is going to be Justin Haley. All of that smoke about leasing a charter to Richard Childress Racing was just a bunch of fans and to some sort media personalities out there trying to spin some news to make it more realistic. The bigger team is going to come in and take care of the smaller team, but that is just not Kaulig's style. Matt Kaulig is here to win, and there was never a doubt in my mind that charter was going anywhere but with the team car. And and now we have AJ on board, and I think next year they're going to be very competitive. Justin, as we talked about in the last episode, has really stepped up his results. He's running very competitively. We've seen what AJ's been able to do with the road courses and on the short tracks and on the mile and a halves. He's running consistently north towards the top 10. So I have high hopes that next year that, and they said it at today's press conference, they are here to make the playoffs. This isn't a joyride. AJ's didn't sign up to just go run laps and say he's a cup driver. He signed up to be a playoff driver, and winning all these races in the Xfinity Series has, I think, propelled him not just emotionally and psychologically, but as a racing driver. I think his craft has improved to the point where he can go out there and compete at a very level and make the playoffs and make a decent run. So we'll see how that plays out going forward. But I think at least, maybe this is just the high of the announcement, but I am feeling really good about where they are as an organization and what they're willing and capable of doing next season.
It makes me wonder if he might have more races left in the 16 Cup car post the Roval. We know that Gregson specifically has a sponsor to run with Kaulig. I forget it's the automotive group. They're the insurance group. I can't remember.
The Bamatro group.
The black and like blue American looking car.
The Freedom Group. Yep. Absolutely.
So we know that he has that race. He has all the rest of the races. However, he's also filling in for Alex Bowman. We don't know how long Alex Bowman's going to be out. It's unfortunate. We'll touch on it more on a crossover podcast, actually, that we're going to do with the 4 Wide podcast. But Bowman's out for a bit, and we don't know how long. And then it's also kind of like, I really want AJ to have the best chance he can at winning the Xfinity Championship this year. We know it's a little bit of a long shot. Maybe less so now that the cars are showing a little bit more speed. Clearly they've been saving their best stuff, which we were kind of skeptical on if they'd be doing that for Xfinity or not. And it seems that they have been so far anyway. More specifically at Texas, it was very noticeable. But I also wouldn't be against, hey, if you need to go run the 16 car a couple of times, then go run the 16 car. We all know though that they could Hendrick could pluck any driver they want in that 48, and it's going to be just fine. Before we go any further, though, man, I want to bring up the fact that AJ was asked if this was a 1-year commitment or a multi-year commitment, and he sort of grinned and looked at Chris Rice and was like, "I don't know how you want me to answer that." And basically, again, there's going to be some people that jump on me here for using this term, especially those that don't like Kaulig racing, but it was basically revealed he has the Jeff Gordon deal. I don't think that's overstating things. He could be in Cup another 4 or 5 years. He could be in Cup this year, and if it goes bad and he's back to Xfinity after he retires, probably still with the organization. This sounds like a lifetime deal for AJ Allmendinger with Kaulig racing.
It certainly does, and they didn't shy away from it. So I mean, I don't think there's any intent to hide what the plan is, and and Chris Rice started the whole press conference with a relatively touching story about how AJ trusted the process and took a leap of faith on Kaulig, and now Kaulig is returning the favor with AJ, and and they came out and said AJ has a multi-year deal in place. He's only committed to 1 year in the Cup Series next season, but that doesn't mean that the next following seasons will be in Cup. It sounds like it's up to AJ and what he wants to do, and and they said the same thing when he took the Xfinity ride last year, that if it wasn't working out, he wasn't happy, if he was stressed out, they would cut it back to a part-time schedule, and if he liked doing it, they could do more of it. And and I see the exact same thing happening, that there's like obviously the Cup Series is a different animal than the Xfinity Series, and the results, the expectations definitely need to be tampered a little bit, because you're racing against the Hendricks and the Joe Gibbs, and running in the top 5 week in and week out is probably not realistic. Top 10s even are going to be unrealistic on a week-to-week basis. So if AJ is getting stressed, or he gets to that mental point where he was with JTG and he's not happy, then they go back to the Xfinity Series, and he knows he can compete there for wins and championships. And and I personally think that this is a situation where AJ is going to excel. We've talked about the car, how it suits his driving style, that that he's going to be competitive and he's going to have a good time. So obviously next year, but the year after that and the year that, they made it very clear that the way the contract is structured, that he can go as long as he wants to, and he can race in pretty much whatever series he wants to. And to me, I agree. I heard lifetime contract. And AJ made it very explicitly clear today as well that he plans to retire from Kaulig racing. He doesn't plan on going anywhere else. So, results be damned, good, bad, or indifferent.
There's no doubt.
Kaulig is his home. So
yeah, sort of jump on your toes here a bit, but like, there is no doubt that other teams, given how he has performed, not just in Xfinity but in Cup, would be going, "Oh, hey, well, we have an opening here. Like, I'm sure you can attract some sponsors. You've already done the same for Kaulig. What about us?" Like, there's no doubt that he was a commodity, and Kaulig has locked him up for life, basically. Which, barring any disastrous fallout, which they don't seem like the organization that lets those sort of things happen. It's incredible, man. It's great, and I will go one step further. Well, they wanted to jump or stop short of saying he'd be in Cup X number of years. AJ's 40 years old. He'll be 41 at the beginning of next season. I view this as he has 3 to 5 years left. Could be more, depending on if he's fit and depending on what kind of schedule he runs. But my guess is AJ will more than likely never be full-time in the Xfinity Series again, unless it gets to a point where Chandler, guy we're not going to talk about yet, that guy, I just jumped ahead of myself. Big spoiler alert. When that guy, who was a big grab for Kaulig today that we're going to talk about, and I want him to have just sort of his own segment here soon. If that guy continues to develop at the rate that he already is, then you got Justin Haley, who's showing major growth this year in the Cup Series, especially over the last 10 weeks or so. Then maybe you get to a point where, okay, now you can go back down to Xfinity. But at the end of the day, I know people were yelling at us on Twitter, quite literally sometimes. People were very passionate about, no, AJ has said he will not go back to Cup. He enjoys Xfinity too much. This is where he's staying. He has no interest in pursuing Cup. And my comeback to that was always, he never said that. He said he prefers to stay in Xfinity, but ultimately he will do what's best for the organization. And what's best for the organization is to have the best, most talented driver in the organization run in the equipment that makes the most money and is going to be the equipment that produces the longevity of the organization going forward. And obviously he's way more open to it this year. You and I just watched an interview with Bob Pockras where he says he absolutely loves the car. So obviously safety concerns, which is a no-brainer at this point. But I think it's very clear that this is the direction he's going, barring a just disastrous year. You can probably bet AJ Allmendinger is going to be in that 16 Cup car for the next few years, if not a little longer. And start buying your 16 merchandise, because that's going to be his number for a little while.
Yeah, I tell you, and I know it's a small thing, but there's something to a number that really just is attractive, and the 16 has really spoken to me, and it's something that I care about, and I'm very happy to see he's going from the 16 Xfinity to the 16 Cup. That is his identity with Kaulig Racing, and that's going to continue. So that is really exciting. And again, like and my counter to those arguments that we've had with. And I won't say arguments, but passionate conversations we've had with people about AJ's willingness to go to Cup racing is he did leave JTG in a very bad place. But it became very noticeable very quick once he joined Kaulig that totally different organization. The cars are at a different level. He was running really well. I think it got to that point where even AJ realized that he belonged in Cup, and maybe he didn't feel that way when he left the series initially, but the results have shown in the Xfinity Series and now in the last couple years in the Cup Series that he is a Cup worthy driver, and his skill set is clearly beyond that of the Xfinity Series. And And if he didn't take the opportunity to go full-time Cup Series, there would be some doubt about, what could have been. And AJ and Kaulig Racing as an organization don't strike me as the what could have been organization. They're going to grab, things by the horns, and they're going to dive in head first and see where it goes. And you know AJ has said many times he's going to do what's best for the organization, and he is the best driver without question, and that is no disrespect to any of the other drivers on the team. AJ Allmendinger is a playoff worthy driver at the Cup Series, and his talent is so exceptional that it needed to be, it needs to shine brightest on the biggest stage, and that's where we are going in the next year. It gives Kaulig, a real strong opportunity to run for wins and playoffs, and and see where that plays out. So I really do feel good about where they are as an organization, and there probably is a shelf life with AJ. I mean, he is going to be 41 next year. I do think probably 5 years max once he gets to that 46 range, which is where Kevin Harvick is this year. You probably get to that point where, okay, now we need to start, maybe a transition plan to the future. And you know what? I could see him going back to the Xfinity series, but on his own decision basis. Maybe he decides that the grind of 36 races is at that age is too much, but he still likes racing. I could see him volunteering stepping out to pursue that. Now, but that's years down the road. I don't want to dive too much into that. But compared to other drivers in the past, and I'm going to bring up a driver like Elliott Sadler, who didn't have much of a choice. He's like, it's Xfinity or bust. I think AJ is at that point where he's going to run out the next handful of years, be competitive, make a playoff run or 2 or 3, and when it's all said and done, he's going to step back and race for fun like he has the last couple of years. And he said it today as well that once his racing days are done, his hope is to stay with Kaulig in some sort of competition role. I could easily see him transitioning into competition director or some sort of leadership role similar to Chris Rice. Driving coach, they said he'll be on the pit box next year for the Xfinity series, trying to help lead the organization forward. And there's going to be a big transition going into the Xfinity series, as we talked about with the other announcement that came today, with Chandler Smith. So there's a lot of meat on that bone in both the Cup and the Xfinity for AJ.
I don't know, absolutely. And I just doing the math. 6 years from now, or from the beginning of the season, we'll put him at 46 because he's 41 at the beginning of the next season. So I'd say 6 years is the long end of things. And I know in our little group chat, I pointed out, hey, Kevin Harvick's 46, and one of our buddies kind of shot me down. Well, Kevin Harvick's a special case, but I'll be honest. If you put AJ Allmendinger beside Kevin Harvick right now, you cannot convince me that Kevin Harvick's a better race car driver than AJ Allmendinger. 5 years ago, you could convince me of that. Now, not so much, especially even with like the equipment comparisons. I think if you take their stats this year, all the races and just look at the races AJ has run, and not just road courses, by the way, he's run far more than that. People like to say, well, he's just running the road courses. That's not the case. And we're going to get into some numbers here in a moment. I think he's right there with those guys. Like, the only concern I have about him not making the playoffs next year is if he has to win to get in it, because I'm not convinced that they're going to win a race. They could. They'll contend for sure, especially on the road courses, but anything can happen. But if there's not 16 different winners come time for the playoffs, I absolutely believe AJ Allmendinger gets in on points. He's just seen how this team can, okay, we're not the fastest car this week, and that's fine. We're going to go collect the most points anyway. And they do it every week.
Well, and that's, and again, this is no disrespect to any of the media on Twitter and all the other social media sites, but we're penciling in AJ for the playoffs. He's got 5 road courses, and they go into all the details about, hey, this is why AJ is going to win on these road courses. And you know what? I don't disagree. He's the best road racer in NASCAR, potentially the best road racer in the history of NASCAR. Certainly can't discount his abilities to win. I think he very easily could. But at the same token, look at how competitive the series is. I mean, you can't pencil in a win. Ross Chastain, Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson. I mean, all these guys and others, Tyler Reddick.
Chase
you know,
Briscoe.
the
In that
Chase
car.
Briscoe's, he hasn't shown a lot since going to Cup, but you're right, he dominated, and Austin Cindric. I mean, just right there, you're talking at least a half dozen drivers who are elite road racers at the Cup Series. So, you know, I'm not willing to pencil in a victory. I mean, it's certainly possible, but you can't guarantee it. But he's going to be competitive enough throughout the season that, again, like this year was a big outlier. We're up to 19 winners now. I do not see that next year. So, barring some level of craziness with that many winners again, I think AJ gets into the playoffs via points, not via win. And that's almost more satisfying, to be honest with you.
Kaulig's approach seems to be, and I'm going to assume, even though they haven't really done this a lot this year with their Cup cars, specifically, they could have really only done it with the 31. And that's not the way they ran most of the races this year. But hey, if they go to Pocono and they're running, 15th to 20th, and they know they're just not going to have top 10 speed, you stay out and you get, there's not always going to be the option, but there are going to be options to collect stage points even when you're not the fastest car. And I guarantee you they're going to go in with that strategy and be like, okay, so we don't have a shot at a win here. We're going to go collect as many stage points as we can and finish somewhere inside the top 20 and leave with a good points day. I guarantee you that will be their strategy going into next year. Some people might not like it, but you gotta know where you're going to be strong. And I want to bring up AJ's stats from this year, which I think some people might be surprised just how good he's been. As we see, the first 5 races didn't exactly go as according to plan. Phoenix was okay, though. You know what? 20th at Phoenix, first race of the year, not bad.
Not his best track either. He does not perform very well at Phoenix.
No, never really has. He's had some qualifying speed there before in the past, but that's always been about it. No matter what car he's been in. I think he was the pole one year in the 43 and just had nothing come race time. So Phoenix is not strong for him. Richmond has just in general been horrific for Kaulig this year in the Cup cars. They do not have that track down. Hopefully that's somewhere they can make some gains. But tracks like Richmond and like Phoenix are tracks where you can go, okay, or even, Pocono or some of the other tracks, Michigan, where you go, okay, well, we might not have, winning speed here, but we're going to take advantage of the stage points. Coda says 33. We all know that at worst, that should have been somewhere between first and third. Mm-hmm. And so let's scratch that one off. Martinsville, the car was having issues all race. They thought something was going on it. And Dover, issues came up again with brakes. I don't even think they finished Dover. I could be wrong, but I know they lost the brakes there. Since then, they have not finished worse than 19th. And that Sonoma race really should have been a 9th place finish. It was he had no power steering and had a spin with like 2 laps to go. So that cost him some positions, and it was a pretty bad spin too. He almost hit the inside wall at Sonoma. There, he had to drive it off and coast it around. But dude, his average finish in 14 races, albeit this includes the All-Star race, is 15.2. That is better than I believe 2 or 3 of the chase drivers. His average finish, if you take away the Coda disaster, thank you, Chastain, and the power steering issue at Sonoma, which, killed him with 2 laps to go, it's 13.6, and that puts him smack dab right in the middle of the chase drivers. That's impressive.
Oh, yeah. It's, again, I think we've said this kind of ad nauseum now, but he is racing the best he's ever raced. And, seeing these results at tracks that, aren't necessarily his strong suits, New Hampshire, 16th. It's a really tough track. It's a tough track for a lot of teams. That, decent day there. And that's what you need to make the playoffs. Even if you don't have the best speed in the car, bring it home for top 15 or right around 15th, and you're going to accumulate those points. And, you said something about, they're, even if they don't have the best car, they can stay out and try to get stage points. And, if you look at how they raced Texas in the Xfinity series, they really focused on those stage points where, Hemrick won the first stage, AJ won the second stage, but they both stayed out at the end of those stages to get those points. And, I expect a similar method throughout the season next year, as you suggested, that, if you maximize stage points and still can bring it home in the top 15, 20, you're going to have a sneaky good year. And some of these other tracks, I mean, Richmond, it's been a struggle. I don't want to write off Richmond, but I'm about to. But you know what? Even at Martinsville, nobody could pass. No one. This package, the one thing that we've kind of talked about, great mile and a half, pretty good road course, but the short track package with the new car is not very good at the moment, and there's a multitude of reasons for that. But everybody was caught up by that, not just us. So when they came back around and they ran at Bristol a few weeks ago, much better result. And I think you're going to see big gains at the short tracks for sure at some of these results. So even Dover, since his days at RPM, it hasn't been his best track, but he's better than 33rd. So I really do think, between his consistency, and you're even seeing it in the Xfinity Series, by the way, not to pivot too much, but he has 25 top 10s in the Xfinity Series. If he can finish the remaining 5 races in the top 10, he'll break the Xfinity Series record for 10s in a season. That consistency on its own, where he is at in his career, is going to probably get him in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely there. I could see a situation where they don't make the playoffs, but they're right there on the cusp. They're going to challenge. I'm going to go one step further, though, man. Both of their cars are going to challenge to make the playoffs. You see both Trackhouse cars in the playoffs this year. And I think both of their cars are going to challenge. Obviously, AJ is going to have a better shot for sure. And as much as I loved Justin Haley, every team, unless you're Hendrick and Gibbs, who have more than one A car, AJ will be the A car. It's not like they're going to be breaking up the team Haley has, but funding matters. Matt Kaulig funds Haley's car basically the entire season, although he gets back from that because it's, again, we've talked about this before on the show, leaf filter protection. They have a marketing budget, so they just choose to spend it on their own NASCAR team, and they still see the return from that. So not every team's in position to be able to do things like that. And they are. I did like, though, before we move on, because there's a lot to talk about, I did like that when they were talking about the Cup schedule next year, AJ joked about the dirt race at Bristol, and everybody bursted out laughing. And I got to be honest, that I have no doubt that's going to be a ugly one.
Yeah, that when you chalk up, you go out there, you have some fun, and make the most of it. And yeah, that's going to be an interesting race. He has ran the Prelude to the Dream a handful of times, as he touched on in his interview today, but not expecting much there. Just have fun. And I think that's, again, when you know you're going to have some bad races, just maximize them. Bring that Kaulig mentality to the team. Make sure you're enjoying yourself and move forward. So I think they're going to do that, and maybe even surprise. We'll see.
Time will tell. The one thing that didn't come today that we thought might come today was there was no announcement about partners on AJ's car, which some people might find concerning. I'm not too concerned about it. Look at the sponsorship that he's brought in to Kaulig. I know some people assume that that they're Kaulig sponsors, but the truth is AJ has brought in some sponsors all on his own. It's a team effort. I'm not saying that, but I'm not saying it's not a team effort, but he has been able to attract sponsors on the Xfinity side, on the Cup side. And I think all those things are very important going forward. I just think when you look at this flyer, man, there's no reason to not assume that Action Industries is going to be all over that car next year. Although we thought Hyperice was going to be all over the car this year, and they are on the car, but they're an associate partner this year. That's it. You look at how many races Action Industries had done hopefully for the next episode, I'll be able to dig it up, but they've done a ton of Xfinity races. They finally got their first win at Dega, which we're going to talk about at the end of the show. But they also have been on, I believe, every Cup race for him that is not Andy's Frozen Yogurt at the All-Star race or Goldfish Casinos. I think Action Industries has been every other race.
They have been, yeah. I am a little surprised, based off the flyer and the colors, that there wasn't any announcement at all. But there wasn't any logos outside of the Kaulig logos anywhere to be seen. So I mean, I don't want to read too much into it, but I kind of look at it as they probably wanted to compartmentalize the announcements. This announcement was, hey, big news, AJ Allmendinger's coming back full-time cup racing, and they wanted to focus on that, and maybe they're still working out the logistics of the contract of any sponsorship deals in place. They're maybe not quite in a position to announce it, but based off what we've seen with Action Industries and how, a company that we didn't see at all last year to a company that has stepped up to the plate in a massive way, and as you just mentioned, in the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series. I don't see them being a one season wonder. I think we're going to definitely see Action Industries on that car in a big prominent role. I mean, I know in the previous episodes I've said upwards of 20 races. Who knows? I'm still confident that they're going to be a big partner for Kaulig Racing and AJ. And we didn't get that announcement today. A little surprised. But the fact that there were no sponsorship logos anywhere kind of make me feel like that wasn't the intention for today. They wanted to focus forward on the organization as a whole. Obviously, AJ was the big announcement, but we definitely got some clarity on the Xfinity side as well. So we'll see. But you're right. I think Action Industries, the Goldfish Casino stepped up there this year to 6 races. Andy's was on the car twice this year at Texas. So, I kind of expect that same group of partners to be back next season, and maybe we'll shift some Nutrien AG in and out. I'm not concerned about the sponsorship aspect of it. That's always a concern. Like, you're going to have the money to fund the car, and you need funding to be competitive. And I know they didn't speak about it today, but I'm not concerned about it. The organization has their ducks in a row. There's going to be some good sponsorship on the car, and I think Action Industries is going to be the lead for that for sure. And I look at it, Hyper Ice. Last year I'm very thankful they came on board. I kind of have a sneaking suspicion that they were given a really awesome deal. If you come on and you sponsor AJ for X amount of dollars, we're going to give you a return far exceeding kind of what that value represents. And they couldn't match that this year. They stayed on board as an associate. But anyway, I we'll see where it plans out, but I have no doubt he's going to be back in a big way.
Our prediction game's been pretty good so far, man. I mean, you more so had the Chandler Smith thing than I did, and we both had the, hey, look at this flyer. This is too spot on to not have an AJ, in my opinion, and it turned out to be true. I'm going to go one further. This is such a small prediction, but I predict Action Industries will be the biggest partner on AJ Allmendinger's car next year, and this is such a small thing, but like, give me an Action Industries racing hauler. I love Kaulig, but I'm sick of seeing the Kaulig company's hauler. I want AJ to have a hauler with a primary sponsor on it as the main thing. And again, that sounds like it's such a small thing, but I think that matters. When you can show up at the racetrack and be like, hey, that's not just my team name on that hauler. There's my sponsor. They're paying the bills. And I think that goes a long way. It used to bug me when he was with the later days in RPM, even the early days at RPM, where the hauler would just be like this black hauler with some smaller sponsors on it, and you could tell it was low funded. And I believe, and we've said this for a while, despite other people saying otherwise, Matt Kaulig is going to sink money into this team. Yeah, they missed out on Kyle Busch. They're gonna take every opportunity to strengthen their team. And while they might have missed out on Kyle Busch, turning the page here, they got what most people consider, outside of Ty Gibbs, to be Toyota's biggest prospect, a Kyle Busch member. Chandler Smith is on his way to Kaulig Racing, replacing AJ Allmendinger in the 16 Xfinity car. This is, again, I'm not too familiar with this guy. I got to lean on Ryan for information and the fans for information and view the stat line, which we'll pull up here shortly. This seems like a huge win for the organization. We've talked about them needing building blocks going forward. I'd say this is a pretty good start, man.
Oh, in fact, it is. Chandler Smith is one of those drivers that I didn't know who he was until last year, and if you look at the track record of TRD and Kyle Busch Motorsports in the Truck Series, they have a real knack of finding some really good talent in the lower series. And one thing I did find out today, that Chandler Smith has been a TRD development driver for 7 seasons up until this point. So even before his days at Kyle Busch Motorsports, he was in a Toyota development, probably in the ARCA series or maybe some late models prior to that. I don't know his history too well beyond the Truck Series, but the one thing that you can tank to the bank, especially with these young drivers, if they're getting a Kyle Busch Motorsports seat and they've got that TR thing, there is an expectation that these guys have a real opportunity, not only to perform in the truck, but to move up through the ranks into the Xfinity Series, into the Cup Series. When you look at today in the Cup Series, there are quite a few Toyota racing development drivers now racing competitively. So I think there's got to be some expectation that Chandler Smith is the real deal, and he's shown it this year. He has 4 truck wins this season, I believe. Maybe it's 3. I see 3 there. So yeah, he has 5 total wins in the Truck Series, 3 this season. 8 top 5s, 14 top 10s. And you can see in his laps led, he's almost doubled them. He's taken the sophomore jump in the Truck Series, and there's a strong chance he's going to win the Truck Championship this year. Obviously, once you get to Phoenix, it's a crap show, and it's who winner take all, and it's going to be hard. It's hard to win champion. He's definitely one of the favorites to win the championship, and I'm very excited about this. And I know we talked about creating a pipeline, maybe a Truck Series in the future, a late model series in the future. Certainly doesn't seem like that's where they're going to be going into 2023. But replacing the veteran in AJ, who's obviously going full-time Cup, with a young driver in Chandler Smith, who's 20 years old, very, very young, to take over the 16 car and run it in the Xfinity Series is a huge win for the organization. There is no doubt that Chandler has been looked very favorably amongst up and coming drivers. I'm not. And if you look at the Kyle Busch to RCR, I think that fallout is getting played out a little bit in the fact that Toyota is losing some really good development drivers, and Chandler Smith is that main guy. So now you've got the young driver, and I know we'll touch on this more in future episodes. But there's definitely got to be some expectation. He is only 20 years old. He will be a rookie in the Xfinity Series next year. There's a good chance he's going to struggle a little bit, until he gets his feet wet. But if you look at the other drivers, Smith or Noah Gragson over the last couple years, coming up from the Truck Series to the Xfinity Series, it does take time, just like going from the Xfinity Series to the Cup Series takes time. I don't expect him to come out and light the world on fire next year, but he is going to have AJ on top of his pit box, and he's going to be able to get coached up, and he's going to learn. Obviously, there's other cars in the Kaulig stable. Landon Castle is going to return next year. They confirmed that today. Bob Pockris sent out a tweet saying Landon Castle is going to be back. So there's still veteran leadership in the Xfinity Series that can help, Chandler along as he develops. And this is almost as big of a deal as AJ going to the Cup Series, because this is a driver, when you look at raw talent, is capable of winning races, winning championships, and really leading a team to that next level, even in Cup. Again, if you look at Justin Haley and where he is at and his development, trajectories can, you can kind of project where they're going to be in 3 years, 5 years, 7, 10 down the road. Patience is required, but this is a huge hire for Kaulig Racing.
No, absolutely. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know Chandler Smith inside and out. That would be disingenuous to the people that listen to this. I haven't watched truck racing in a very long time. The last truck race I watched, I think Allmendinger might have ran for, I'm probably going to get the team wrong. It might have been GMS at Watkins Glen, and the race didn't go overly well. for multiple reasons. But that's the last truck race I watched. Other than like now and then I might flick past a truck super speedway race or something. I'm going to be inclined to probably watch some of his playoff races here just to see what he's about. But stats typically don't lie, and the kid, when you look at how he's done, he has only gotten better. I think only 2 of those are full-time seasons, but he's gotten better the more that he runs. He's led 440 laps this year, average start of 7.3, average finish of 8.9. 3 of them wins, and he also seems to have a knack for running pretty good on road courses. At Coda, he had a 5th place finish, which is pretty good. At Sonoma, he had a 5th place finish. At Mid-Ohio, he was 6th place. And I believe I'm probably forgetting a road course here, unless they just don't do as many as the Xfinity cars.
They definitely don't. Yeah, I think that might be it there.
Sonoma 5th. I don't know if I said Sonoma too. So, but he, I could have swore he was on the pole for one of those races somewhere, but maybe not. But he's got a lot of speed, and hey, last time I checked, AJ Allmendinger had a pretty big impact on helping Justin Haley, on helping Ross Chastain, on helping Chris Buescher really, find their craft in driving road courses. There's no reason to believe that AJ Allmendinger isn't going to be able to sit down with Chandler Smith and help him out. I'm expecting him to be quite good on the road courses next year, if I'm being honest. Not to mention, we're going to be sitting in cars that run very well. So you mentioned Pipeline, man. It's not exactly the truck series. It's not an ARCA team or a late model team, whatever. But to bring in someone with youth, with raw talent, who, by the way, has a sponsor that we assume's coming, considering Matt Kaulig's Chris Rice's comments about his Chandler Smith sponsor, which we believe is Safe Light Auto Glass. This is huge for the organization. You needed someone not named Justin Haley, who was young, that you could go, that could be our guy in 3 or 4 years. Let's start developing him and help him, learn his craft more.
Absolutely, and truthfully, going back to even where Chandler Smith's development's going to come into play, it wasn't announced today, but I think it's fair to say we're going to see AJ running some Xfinity races, probably at the road courses as well. So the best way to learn, especially with a driver like AJ, a race with him, he's going to be able to look at the data and get back to you and say, hey, these are your breaking points. You need to shift here, or maybe don't run this gear. All of those very intricate aspects of road course racing. Having AJ in the car next to him will be hugely beneficial. So I'm assuming that's where they're going to go next year. So, and then as you said, I mean, I don't want to put the cart ahead of the horse here, but I do expect Chandler Smith to excel, and he's going to run really well. And again, maybe 2023 is the year, grace year, let him learn a little bit and see where he's at the end of next year. But going into 2024 and beyond, I think reasonable expectations of making the playoffs and winning some races and making a deep run. And if that does come to fruition, as I predict, I hope, now you kind of get to an interesting point of, maybe he's ready to go Cup racing, and Justin Haley and AJ Allmendinger are still running in the Cup Series. So you also have to protect your talent, because as we've seen just today, Chevy Kaulig has poached Smith, and if he does develop in a way that we kind of expect him to, you got to make sure he's not poached at the Cup level. So as you look at the future of the organization, and I know Kaulig wants to add a third charter, so maybe that's an option down the road. So just stuff to think about as you look to the future. This is a great first step, and I expect that Chandler Smith is the first of hopefully several other younger drivers stepping up into the Xfinity Series with Kaulig. When Landon or Daniel in the future might step out for various reasons, and you replace them with younger talents. Or again, they do expand.
Year if Daniel doesn't
So
find funding. So
yeah, well, that brings up the interesting point of, they want to bring Daniel back, but Bob Pockris also tweeted today, along with, Landon is confirmed back next year. So that's really excellent news for Landon. And they didn't announce a sponsor. So I don't know if that's Voyager or somebody else, but really good that Landon's going to be back, especially stability wise. That voice is returning. Daniel is another story. They said they're looking for sponsorship for Daniel, and right now it's kind of up in the air if he's going to come back or not. And maybe that means they do trim 2-car organization with Landon and Chandler if they can't find sponsorship. Or if they can, then there'll be a 3-car organization. So we'll see how that plays out. But I get the feeling that Kaulig wants to be a 3-car organization in the Xfinity series. So whether that plays out this year or the following years, and who those drivers are to be determined still. But if you look at where Kaulig wants to go, I see them wanting to be a 3-car organization. It gives them more pool of talents, resources, sponsors, the whole nine. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. And obviously we are in a wait and see pattern with Daniel Hemrick. I would like to see Daniel Hemrick come back. He is a champion. He's not going to light the world on fire, but he is consistent, and what's made AJ so good this year is that consistency. So having a championship voice in the garage to help not only Landon but also now Chandler would be really big. So I don't want to lose Daniel Hemrick. I really hope he's able to come back, and we'll see where that plays out.
Well, I'll throw another prediction out there. I think there's zero chance that they go into next season's Xfinity year with just Landon Castle and Chandler Smith. I think there'll be someone else, whether it's Daniel Hemrick, whether it's another prospect that they can pry from someone else. I don't think they'll go in with just those two guys. But, stranger things have happened. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Is there anything else, man, that you want to touch on while we're here? It's such a big day for Kaulig. I do want to say that I thought that the media did a poor job of handling today's event, and to me, it lends a little bit of proof to what I've been saying for a while now. Is if this is a bigger named team doing this, there's probably more media coverage, and it's unfortunate because it's a sport you want to pay attention to the teams that are investing money in the sport and attempting to grow. And that's what today was all about. And I did not think the media did a good job of handling it today. Hopefully that changes going forward. But as a Kaulig fan, as an AJ Allmendinger fan, think about where we were with JTG. We were talking about this earlier. Allmendinger was literally losing his hair because of how stressed he was. Still had a year left on his deal when he left. And that was it. I thought that was it anyway. And I thought, definitely far more talented driver than he'll ever be given credit for. You got to win. I can live with that. And then here comes one of the most inspirational comeback stories in modern NASCAR history by my books and my accounts. Like, he's won, what did he say today? 13 races with Kaulig Racing. He is 2-time Xfinity regular season champion. He's been contending for the championship. He has won at the Cup level. He's been competitive at the Cup level. It speaks volumes about AJ Allmendinger's character and his determination, but it also speaks volumes of the team as well. And it's a day to celebrate for sure.
Oh yeah, and I agree with you. I felt like the announcement today, it felt weird. Just the way it was presented. I know they obviously did it on their facility. That this was the Kaulig fan day. That they wanted to represent the fans, and there were fans in attendance for the announcement, which is really cool. But when you and again, I understand AJ is not Kyle Busch, but I watched the Kyle Busch announcement. They did it at the NASCAR Hall of Fame. There was a huge presence. It was really well put together. They had a big stage, and it just felt like an announcement that had some oomph to it. And this announcement kind of felt flat. obviously when the broadcast came on the air, I don't know if you noticed this, but the microphone was hot. You could kind of hear the conversation between AJ, Chris, and Matt, which again, it was kind of interesting, kind of funny because they were joking a little bit, but wasn't as, I guess, professional as I was expecting it to be. And and even the way I love that AJ got to announce Chandler as his replacement, and they clearly had that set up. They had the keys and they're handing it off, and it was a big deal that AJ got to do that, and I respect that immensely. But just the way Chandler walked in on the side, they didn't have a seat. They only had one microphone that they were passing amongst the three of them. That felt weird to me. Why didn't they each have their own microphone? So yeah, I think it was a little disappointing with how it was presented. It definitely didn't quite have the same pizzazz as the bigger teams, and I do think that is probably a part of the growing pains per se, as they become a bigger organization, more competitive, win more races, maybe a championship down the line. That's going to look different. But at the end of the day, the announcement was made. It was really exciting. And by about 5 o'clock this afternoon, nobody's going to know how the announcement was made, and that's okay. But yeah, when you look at where, just that career arc of AJ, and I said this in the chat when AJ came into NASCAR, he was driving the Red Bull 84, and I did not like AJ. I thought he was a brash d-bag. He rubbed me the wrong way, and I know he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. It's been something he's kind of had to overcome over the years, with the fans, with his fellow competitors. And you've seen that, he obviously started at a very low. He missed a bunch of races early in his career. They brought in Mike Skinner like 5 races in to just get the car qualified because AJ wasn't qualified. So right out of the gate, he was at a low. And then, he started to figure it out, and Red Bull fired him. And then he had to move forward, and he got in with Gillette Evernham, which then turned into Richard Petty Motorsports. And she's going forward. Obviously the Penske situation was a huge deflating moment of his career. That could have been it. That could have, a decade ago, 2012 is when he drove for Penske Racing. And that situation there could have been the end of his career, but he fought back from that. He rose up, got a deal with JTG. So, the up and downness of his career is one of those that when you look back in the history of drivers, there has not been many drivers that have had such a roller coaster career, and just the tenacity to continue forward and get better and evolve and win a race in a car that probably wasn't capable of winning races. What I agree with you. Had that been the end in 2017, I would have been disappointed because he was so young, but it would have been something I could have said, all right, this is it. He got a win. I'm excited. But now where he has evolved to, he is somebody in the garage that people look up to. His fellow competitors really respect him. We talked about this before. Kyle Larson, has come out and said, this is a guy that I love racing with. He's very, very good. He's got elite talent. He's, when he comes into the Cup garage, he gets media attention that he never got before, because there is now this expectation that when he shows up, he's going to be competitive and he's going to run well. Obviously, his trajectory in the Xfinity series is, as a fan, been something that I've just cherished every moment, all of the wins, the regular season championships. So, yeah, I mean, it is quite the story that no other driver in modern history, I think, can come close to having. So, this was a big day for him, for his fans, and I'm looking forward to the next couple years and see where the trajectory plays out for him, because I think his story is just now getting to a point where it can really excel. So, yeah, it's a big deal. I'm really excited for him and the team.
So I apologize if people are watching me look everywhere as Ryan's talking. I took all of that. I just got to work at the same time as doing this multitasking. So this has been an incredible experience, man. I think that the comeback story cannot be overstated. There are people that will just never take AJ Allmendinger seriously because he hasn't won a champion. I still see it, dude. I still see it all the time on social media. He's only good at road course. He's done nothing else. It's like, where have you been for the last 2 or 3 years? Like, what are you watching that I'm not? And it's just not true. And that's the stigma of social media, though. Yeah, everybody has an opinion, just like an ass. We all have one, and some of them are good, and some of them are not. And the people that don't think AJ Allmendinger can do anything but road course race, well, I would say that they're fairly inaccurate opinions. I did like Allmendinger early on, though. And what got me, man, was I think I might have mentioned this on the first episode I did, which was just myself. He did an interview. He missed a Bristol race. I believe it was Bristol. And they interviewed him anyways. And he was just pissed. But it wasn't like whiny pissed. It was this, he needs to be better. He has to do better. It was like this drive to want more. And there's so many times that I've seen in professional sports, anything, hockey, baseball, NASCAR, football, basketball, whatever you want, where you see someone get complacent. I don't think I've ever seen AJ Allmendinger be complacent, and that's why I love him.
Yeah, and you see it today. Every time he wins a race, that excitement, that jubilation, like he's just won a race for the first time, because he doesn't take it for granted. And every win can be your last win, and you have to enjoy those moments. And in the end, that passion is what turned the table for me, and why I've become such a fan of his, is that he's old, the aggression, the anger, and he puts it now towards his driving. And he that same excitement is why he gets so down on himself at the same token. But that's very relatable, as somebody that things don't always go right, and he's not afraid to show those moments. So it's, and again, I told you off air that the moment that I truly became a fan is when he drove that 44 Richard Petty Motorsports car a couple years back. He did the Daytona 500. They barely scraped enough funding to get him in that race, and him and Elliott Sadler and Casey Kane, they put on a show. Those 3 RPM cars were bad fast, and he had a real chance to win that race, and it didn't work out. It finished third, but it was that moment of like, oh man, yeah, not only is this guy a personality, but he can really drive a car. And I've always been an underdog fan, and that entire season he had to scrape and claw, and they barely had enough funding to get him to the track, as you said earlier, with the black collar and all that. And I remember that season they had some really wonky sponsors on that car. Anybody that would throw a few dollars their way, and they're like, all right, let's go, we'll put you on the car, just get them from track to track. And they did not miss a race that season, and that determination then is where it became real for me.
Well, we gotta begin to wrap this thing up. We both have work commitments that we have to attend to. But I gotta ask you, man, before we go, Talladega, what did you think? Obviously, he finally won on a super speedway, and even though the Cup cars didn't get the results necessarily that they wanted, Justin Haley was another top 15. They ran much better than where they finished.
Oh yeah, I mean, we knew going in that the Kaulig cars on the Xfinity side, they race really well at the super speedways. They have for a while. They're always up front, not just AJ. All of the cars find their way up front. But this was a playoff race. I think the expectation was just don't wreck. Keep yourself clean. Get through this. Go to the Roval. Do your thing at the Roval. But he raced towards the front, 8th in the first stage, 3rd in the second stage, and obviously him with the help of Landon. And can't say that enough. I mean, Landon Castle is the reason AJ won the race, because he stuck with him and he pushed him the last handful of laps. And his push is what allowed AJ to slingshot to the side of Sam Mayer and win by 3 feet at the stripes. So it was just a matter of time. He's been so close for so long. It was just a matter of time until it fell into place. I wasn't expecting it, but man, it was an exciting win. I screamed on my couch because it just thrilling that he was able to pull off that last lap pass. So a huge day for the Xfinity team. All 3 cars, top 10 finishes. Hemrick is still on the outside looking in for the playoffs, but obviously AJ is now locked in. He's going to the Roval, where I think he will be the odds-on favorite. It is hard to win a race 4 years in a row, but he should win that race. He's the best road racer around. There's nobody really there to compete with him outside of Ty Gibbs. And then, of course, the Cups car. Yeah, I mean, Justin Haley for the last 25 or so laps, if not longer, was always in, the third row, fourth row back from the front. You could see his car on the screen the entire time. He was in the front. He was competitive. It didn't quite work out. He got shuffled to the back, finished 15th, but he was in the top 10 most of the day. So, as expected, both cars really, or both, the Xfinity and the Cup side were very, very strong at Talladega. We obviously got the result on the Xfinity side. Still, a top 15 is nothing to sneeze at. I know Haley could have won that race. He's great at super speedways, but you walk out of there with a top 15 in a clean race car, good day. So, all in all, could not be any happier with where they are, coming out of Talladega, go. And this is just, from a playoff points position standings. If AJ can win the Roval, that's 5 additional bonus points. He obviously got 5 bonus points for winning at Talladega. He won the stage at Texas. So, there is a line here where he can really gain a bunch of playoff points going into the next round. And I was concerned that he was going to be in a very precarious position going into the final 3 races prior to the championship. If he can win the Roval, all of a sudden his points position looks a heck of a lot better than it did. And he really strong chance to make the championship 4.
I like that you emphasize top 15s there, because I know there's some people worried that they're not going to get to see AJ run up front. And you know what? You're not going to see him as up front as often in Cup. And guess what? You're not going to see the same amount of coverage for AJ in Cup. That's just the way those guys do things on Sundays. Do you want if you want the ultimate AJ Allmendinger fan experience, ready yourself with 3 screens. Watch the race on TV. We're going to have in-car cams. I think it's from now on. You'll be able to watch every single lap of AJ Allmendinger with the in-car cam and the scanner. That's how I watch when he does Cup races. Now that's how I watched Bristol. I paid attention to Haley last week that way. That is how you can get the ultimate Kaulig racing experience on the Cup Series when the TV doesn't show them enough. They're going to show him on road courses for sure, but he's not going to get the attention when he's running good on other tracks. They proved that with Bristol. Hardly ever on the screen, and he was top 15 all day, finished 7th. That's the way NASCAR does things. I don't agree with it until the driver really forces their hand. And I think there's going to be times where they force his hand. But top 15s, I think, is where people should be setting their expectation mark. Go into next year and collect as many bloody top 15s as you can. Top 10s are bonuses. Top 5s are great. The road courses, there's not 2 of them anymore, so there's not going to be as much pressure, but go and just compete for the win on the road course. That's my expectation this weekend at the Roval, dude. I wasn't fortunate enough to see Talladega. It was the chat that alerted me to what had happened. I was at a celebration of life for a family member that had passed. And I looked down at my phone later in the evening. I'm like, oh, he won on a super speedway. So, and it's one of the few races I didn't see this year. Of course, I also didn't see Portland this year. So he's really kicking me in the ass for not watching. But top 15s, I think for AJ and Haley, they are good. Rack up as many top 15s and as many stage points as possible. And the points are going to take care of themselves, man. I'm super stoked. My expectations this weekend, I'm not going to say win for either one, but my expectations are that he will be competing for the win, whether that's first, second, third, or fourth in both series. Obviously, a little better chance to win in Xfinity than in Cup, but I think he'll be competing for the win in both as long as equipment holds up, because he was the 3rd fastest car in the Cup Series, different car, but 3rd fastest car last year in the Cup Series at the Roval. I'm not just talking qualifier practice. He was consistently top 3 lap times, and then the car broke. So if they can avoid that, he's got a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. I am going to go on a limb and predict he wins the Xfinity race this weekend, unless he just gets wrecked, which it's a road course. It can happen. I think he's going to win. Ty Gibbs obviously has been very, very fast. He's the only car that's within the same zip code as AJ on a road course. but he just runs the Roval so well. I really don't think even Ty will be able to keep up with him. I think he wins the Xfinity race. But now that he's locked in, he doesn't necessarily have to race for stage points, so he can be more aggressive with the pit strategies. He doesn't need the points. He doesn't need the bonus point as much as that'd be nice. You don't need it. So I expect them to be aggressive and
bonus
one
points still carry over in the playoffs.
They sure do. Yep.
They
Up
do.
until the last week. Yeah. The last race they don't, but up until that point, at the end of the road, they don't matter anymore. But through next week, they mean something. So it's a big deal. So winning that race will go a long way to making sure he has a better chance to make the final four. But yeah, he can be aggressive. He doesn't need the stage points. He can pit early. He can do what he needs to do. I feel good about that one. Cup Series, yeah, hard to say. I'm again, as long as the car holds up and he doesn't miss a shift or something like that, which can happen. He's done it twice now in his career. The car holds. He doesn't blow the motor. I think a top 5 is more than reasonable. I kind of expect top 5, and Chase Elliott's going to be really good. Kyle Larson won last year. Tyler Reddick, as we talked about, really showed out this season. So hard to predict to win. Maybe he could. It's certainly possible. I think it's his best track, but I think a top 5 on the Cup Series is definitely a realistic opportunity today.
Yeah, I think I'd be disappointed if it wasn't a top 5, to be honest. That's where my expectations are. I'm not saying 7th or 8th place wouldn't be good, but you want to make a statement for next year. You go and you run a top 5, and I'm completely convinced that there is nobody better, including Kyle Larson, at that racetrack than AJ Allmendinger. There's just a massive equipment difference. So if he's in contention late, great. My dream scenario, although this would spark some debate for sure online, is he's following Ross Chastain with a couple laps to go, and karma rears its ugly head in there. That's what I would like.
It'd be very satisfying, that's for sure. Very satisfying. And I like Ross, but to see him spinning through the infield would not bring a tear to my eye. That's for sure. Yeah, I really do. Top 5 is definitely where I expect him to be, and he's got momentum too. I mean, I don't think that can be understated enough. Winning Talladega, this announcement.
The whole team has momentum right now.
The whole team has momentum right now. So yeah, I think that's going to carry over. And if he does win Saturday, I mean, again, can't guarantee a thing, but if he does win Saturday, that's 2 wins in a row going to the Sunday race. That on its own can carry a lot of weight for how he runs. So I think he's going to be very competitive, and it would not surprise me in the slightest if he swept to the weekend.
Yeah, time will tell. That's going to do it for us, though. That's a 70-minute episode in the books, previewing the Roval, recapping Talladega, and recapping the Kaulig Fan Day. AJ Allmendinger is your full-time driver next year and probably for the foreseeable future of that 16 Cup car for Kaulig Racing. Can't wait to watch him on Sundays again going forward. It's going to be a blast. And then Chandler Smith, a big snag for Kaulig Racing, and even Chevrolet. I know we don't really have time, dude, but I want to say, even though it's not Kyle Busch, I can't help but wonder if them going and poaching Chandler Smith makes Chevrolet, and then Allmendinger also going up with his success, makes Chevrolet go, okay, maybe we need to give these guys a little bit more support because they damn well deserve it.
Yeah, it's the thing about the Chevy stable. There's a lot of good teams in the Chevy stable. They obviously fund Hendrick Motorsports. With Kyle Busch going to RCR, I know they're going to step up support of that organization. So I don't know how much more of that pie is there to go around, but Kaulig has not disappointed at all. They have shown that they are there to stay. They deserve more support from Chevy, from sponsors. And they've earned it, and we'll see how it plays out.
All right, man. Thanks for doing this today. It was a blast, and Roval's coming up. What an exciting time to be a Kaulig fan. For those of you watching or listening, if you're on YouTube, comment down below. Let us know your thoughts. Are you happy that AJ Allmendinger is going back Cup racing? Are you worried about it a bit? Let us know what you thought of Kaulig Fan Day. Are you happy about Chandler Smith? Huge snag, in my opinion, and in Ryan's opinion, for the organization. And it's a big hit to TRD, too. A big one, it seems like. So let us know in the comment section down below. You can also check us out on, where are we podcast-wise, dude?
We are on Apple. We are on Spotify. We are on Google. You can find us on Amazon as well. So check us out on all of the main podcast sources.
I didn't even know Amazon was a podcast place. So you learn stuff every day. That's going to do it for us. Don't forget, put a smile on that face. Enjoy your weekend. And if you're Canadian, happy Thanksgiving. Have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend, everyone.